For the Carolina Panthers, man, I thought that for this team, they looked like they were going to stay at least a little bit competitive, despite what was likely going to be rebuilding 2023. They were a decent team, coming up just short of winning the NFC South in 2022. You know, you had Sam Darnold. You had a team that fired their head coach, Matt Rule, the fool. A quarter way into the season, Steve Wilkes did a decent job having this team compete in a crappy NFC South that Tom Brady and the Bucs were letting slip away, but unfortunately just came up just short. So the Panthers came about a game short of trying to steal away the NFC South from Tom Brady and the Bucs in 2022. So they're going to 2023. They didn't retain Steve Wilkes, and well, during the offseason, they pretty much changed just about everything around the team. From the head coach in Frank Reich, who was ousted from Indianapolis, and they pretty much put all their chips, like literally all their chips. They were placed at the 9th overall pick, but then they went to go all in, to go all the way up to the 1st overall pick, to go and get the top quarterback prospect that this time last year in Alabama's Bryce Young. So it was an interesting decision by many. I can't really remember how I exactly prospected, in quotations, Bryce Young, but nonetheless, it seemed like they got some help for their guy in free agency too. And I thought that, despite how they structured their roster, I thought they could contend and rebuild because, well, they were in a very crappy division that was the NFC South. I mean, just look at the Bucs, just look at the Saints, just look at the Falcons. I mean, they didn't exactly have good off seasons as well. The South was a very crappy division. Probably was going to be the worst division in my eyes when I previewed them like last year. Well, 2023 then happened, and boy, was I very wrong about these Carolina Panthers, because what could go wrong exactly went wrong for these Panthers. Just about everything you could have possibly imagined went very wrong for Carolina. Bryce Young was very bad in his rookie season. He tried, but failed to get past his terrible offensive line. He was like one of, if not the most pressured quarterback in the league. He had a terrible supporting cast outside of Adam Thielen. And I mean, of course, he had his own struggles. We just can't blame the supporting cast. He had his own struggles of not getting past his first read, struggling with turnovers, getting sacked frequently. I mean, even when his offensive line gave him a little bit of protection. But then he had other things revolving against him. The offseason investment of running back Miles Sanders from the Eagles, it was a very bad one. His production went way down, averaging at 800 yards in Philadelphia in 4 seasons, and then he cut that in half in his 1 season in Carolina. That's bad. That is really bad. And he really underperformed beyond the stats. And then Frank Reich's development of his quarterback and his management of the offense were so good, he got fired by week 12. Yeah. Ouch. I mean, the only win that they got was against the Houston Texans when they were coming off a bye around midseason, but just still. This team was severely bad. It was just that terrible. And it's got to a point where it was so bad that the owner, David Tepper, was also getting himself into trouble. He was caught on camera towards the end of the season in that week 17 shutout loss against the Jaguars, throwing a drink at a Jags fan, showing how all elite he was, proving his loyalty to Tony Khan, C-O-N, by throwing a drink on a Jags fan. Or maybe he was a plant by Noseman, Triple H, to go throw a drink against an AEW fan. I don't know. But I mean, not for all the bad shit that happened for Carolina in 2023, there were at least some bright side. There's at least a very few bright spots for the Panthers this year. One of their 2 wins in this season at least had an impact. At least had an impact on the playoff picture. And that came in the form of the Week 15 win against the Falcons. The Falcons were still, by that point, in contention of the NFC South because, yes, it was that crappy. And that win against the Falcons ended up costing Atlanta both the NFC South and, well, head coach Arthur Smith his job. So, and in essence, it not only helped, I don't know if it helped Carolina in a sense, but I mean, it also helped Arthur Smith and Atlanta in a sense. So, Carolina at least did something. They at least managed to have a little bit of hope. And then defensive tackle Derek Brown, he was probably the lone bright spot on that defense, being the most consistent positive from their badly coached defense. Brown was a tackling machine. He at least knew how to get the key stops when necessary, and he was a Pro Bowl. He earned himself a Pro Bowl nod. So, I mean, there was at least a few positive things in this season. I mean, it was mostly bad, but not everything was terrible. But still, they went 2-15. But yeah, to say it was a very terrible year, to say it was a mostly bad year, it's an understatement. Like when you look at the highlights on YouTube, this Panthers team was very unwatchable, both on and off the field, and it really showed. It really showed. Not only did this terrible season get Frank Reich fired, and like not even after the season ended, like well before the season ended, but it also got general manager Scott Fitter fired. 5 years in Carolina, and well, this is what he had to show for it. And let's face it, he deserved it after getting swindled by the Bears for what ended up being a crappy pre-draft trade. You know, all those like first and second round picks, and then also having to give up DJ Moore too to Chicago, your number one receiver. So yeah, and it's yeah, no wonder why Bryce Young was like handed shit. He had no top receiver. Good job. So, an owner that was that's now on his way to claim the title as the worst because, you know, Dan Snyder's not there anymore. If not already, you know, you have to wonder whoever's going to be the new head coach and general manager is going to have that tall task of trying to rebuild this team to respectability with an owner that's, well, full micromanagement. So, David Tepper went on to hire Bucs offensive coordinator Dave Canales as his head coach. He did a pretty good job resurrecting Baker Mayfield in 2023. But now whether he can do the same with Bryce Young remains to be seen. Tepper also went on to promote assistant general manager Dan Morgan to general manager and president of football operations. So at least for Dan Morgan, he has some familiarity within the organization as both a player and as an executive. But now let's see if Tepper will let him put together a proper roster without any sort of micromanagement from his end. So looking at their offseason, currently as it stands, they have around $36 million in cap space. So it's something, but in the grand scheme of things, it's kind of also not a lot. At least it's better than the other teams that we're going to be talking about. So they do pick at number one, but oh wait, they gave that away. They gave that away to the Chicago Bears last year to go and get Bryce Young. And they don't pick till round 2. Oh, wow. Smart decision there, Carolina. And by then, they'll only have 6 picks to work with. Yeah, good job. Good trade there. Fortunately for them, though, they don't have a lot of key free agents that they have to deal with. The only ones that they have to deal with is linebackers Brian Burns and Shaq Thompson. So I feel like that should be a priority for them to keep those two together in Carolina. Some of their team needs that they really need to address this offseason is, well, getting that number one receiver for Bryce Young. Obviously, it's going to be hard to do that in the draft. Well, maybe they might find a gem in round 2. But regardless, you cannot have an old yet reliable Adam Thielen as his only go-to receiver. You got to find a big name that can truly help Young unlock his potential. And, of course, you got to find protection, too. Speaking of protection, the offensive line. It was another reason why the offense struggled big time because the overall blocking up front was so bad. So they got to find some upgrades at guard and even at tackle in the draft. Maybe they could get lucky in free agency as well. And then, like I said, you got to re-sign Brian Burns. It's a no-brainer. He's been a consistent cog of that defense. And long-term, they got to lock him up. I know there's been, rumors and speculation that they're going to franchise tag him, but the best thing they could do is sign him long term. So for the Carolina Panthers, they have serious, like dead ass serious work to do in the offseason if they want to begin an actual rebuild, both on and off the field. Just as long David Tepper's ass doesn't get involved, like hands-on with the new regime's like work. But man, even with whatever they do this offseason, like the list is abundant. Their needs are abundant. 36 million cap space, only 6 picks to work with in the draft. It's probably not enough to address their biggest needs going into next season. So good luck to Dan Morgan and Dave Canales trying to deal with this mess, because boy, they're going to need it.